All right, in today's video, we are going to reassemble my OTA, which as you can see, I completely disassembled, and I'll go through each piece and how I've cable management it and how each piece integrates with the final product. So to start with, we have obviously my OTA. This was originally fork mounted, as I mentioned before. I'm not going to go through how I deforked it. I will link to the video that helped me. There's this guy that went through step by step on how to do it, and it was perfect. It worked out flawlessly for me. So that is how we got it to the state that it's in right now. So all the accessories that I needed to buy. The first one is this Losmandy plate. It's a dovetail. It's what I'm using to attach to my mount. I could have used a Vixen plate as well, but the Losmandy's a little beefier, a little stronger. I figured it'd be the better solution for that. So speaking of a Vixen plate, I do have a Vixen as well, or Vixen Dovetail rather. I have that for my accessories. All my accessories mount onto the Vixen. I've got not one, but two dew heaters, one for the corrector plate and one for the primary mirror. Again, I'm not sure if the primary mirror one is necessary, but I had it, so I'm using it. I've got a couple cables here, just a couple of USB cables, one for my camera and one for my focuser. You want to make sure that you don't skimp on these, especially for the one for your camera. You want to make sure it's a high quality USB cable so you don't have any error with data transmission. So this is my EQMod cable. So this is a USB to an RJ45. This is what the ASIAir uses to control the mount and tell it where to go. So EQMod, you can pick these up. Unfortunately, I only found it in one length. It's about 6 feet long. Not the best for cable management. So I've had to bundle that up and tie it down so it's all neat and tidy. The other thing with cables is you want to get them as close to the appropriate length as possible so you don't have to wrap them and deal with slack. Next cables that I have are a couple of power cables. Again, don't skimp on these. In the field, if you skimp on these, they will tend to short out on you and you're going to deal with all kinds of problems. Try to get them the correct length as well. So as you see, I've got one of them's a little shorter, got one of them a little longer. I think that's 4 foot length and a 3 foot length, if I remember correctly. They were the lengths that worked out properly for me. If I could get this one even shorter, I would. I wasn't able to find like a 6-inch power cable that was beefy enough for what I wanted. So this one actually powers my ASIAir. This one powers my camera. And this one with the right angle connectors is what I use for my Powerbox. And there's a reason for that, and I'll explain you when I get to it. The next cable that I have, it's not really a cable, well, I suppose it is. It is my temperature controller that came with my focuser. I'm not going over my focuser today. That'll be in a further video for the imaging train, but it's just a 1/8 audio jack to a little temperature probe on the end. But that we're going to wire in as well because I want that all contained within my OTA, and you'll see that at the end. And the last thing I have is the temperature control for my Powerbox. So my Powerbox that I have, and we can go right into that, is the Pegasus Pocket Powerbox, or Power Micro Box rather. So this was what I originally needed when I first wired up my OTA. What I was doing is I was taking power, it was running through my mount, coming up, I take that back. The power was coming up to the Powerbox first, then going through my mount to power it. Now I'm doing it the other way, is I'm running power through my mount first, and then up to my telescope. And when I put it all together, to my OTA. When I put it all together, I'll explain why, but basically it was so, or the reason I'm doing it now is to lessen the chance of cable snags. But back to the Powerbox, it's got power in, it's got 4 power outs. I'm only using one of them right now. I might use an additional one in the future. Oh, I take that back, I'm using 2. But I might be using additional ones in the future depending on what I am powering. Plus, the one big thing about this is it has dew controllers in it and are automatic. So based on that temperature control, when it gets to the, if it gets close to the dew point, it fires on the dew heaters and keeps them at proper temperature instead of having them full blast all the time. So, Powerbox. Next thing I have is the ASIAir. This is the computer that runs everything. Yep, it's got power outputs as well. The way that I have this configured, as you'll see, is I actually cover up the Powerbox with my USB hub. So I couldn't use these even if I wanted to, unless I redid the cable management, and I'm pretty happy with how I have it right now. But we'll go over the ASIAir as well in another video, and there's tons of other people that go over the ASIAir. Speaking of the USB hub, I just picked up a cheapy one. It is a USB 3.0 hub, so it wasn't super cheap, but it wasn't anything extravagant. It was just something that I found on Micro Center. It's either Micro Center or Amazon. I don't remember which. The only problem I had with this is this did come with this annoyingly bright blue light, and I solved that just by wrapping some electrical tape around it, and now you don't see the light anymore, and I don't have to worry. Finally, I've got some split tubing for cable management, and I think that's it as far as what's going on the rig. I've got a couple tools that I'm going to be using to put everything together. I think just a couple of Allen keys is all I'm going to need. I originally had a couple Phillips screws in here, but I've since replaced those with hex head bolts. So we're going to use those. And I just got a pair of snips to cut off the ends of the zip ties. I know I've got a bunch of zip ties in there. One thing that I also had that I forgot to mention are these two guys. They're Vixen shoes, and one of them goes on the ASIAir, one of them goes on the Powerbox to connect those to the Vixen. All right, so now we've gone through everything. Let's get to actually installing stuff. So the first thing I'm going to install is the Losmandy. So it's got 4 bolts on to connect onto the saddles. I'm just going to loosen those up and then place it on gently, and then actually attach it to the OTA. The reason I do that is because these bolts have play and there's some give in it. So it might not align perfectly, although it actually looks like it's going to. Nope. So I'm going to have to loosen these guys up, and I believe it's this one. So loosen this and loosen that. All right. Now the Losmandy bolts are these guys. And again, I tried to put washers on everything just to prevent them from loosening out in the field. I actually did run into a problem where I lost a bolt somewhere along my travels, and I didn't find out about it till months later. And I finally got the replacement bolt for it, And so I have a full collection of bolts holding my OTA together, or my Losmandy plate. Again, when you put everything in, just gentle pressure. Be concerned that these holes go straight through your tube, and you could damage the mirror if you wrench it down too tight. And last one here. All right. Once I get these tightened down, then I'll tighten down the other 4 bolts. You want to use a fair amount of pressure, but not too much, so you're not hitting that mirror again. All right, that feels about right. Don't forget to tighten down the bolts that you loosened. Again, these were one of the ones that I lost out in the field. Okay. So the Losmandy, whatever, the dovetail plate has been installed, nice and tight. The next thing we're going to install is the dew shield, or the dew heaters themselves. So we're just going to wrap these, or feed these underneath the plate here. So I can pop it up on its end. Might make it a little easier for us. I take it back. This one goes here. So this one actually goes closer to the edge of the scope. At least that's where I've always had it. So we're going to put it back there. It's the other one that goes near, or gets looped through the dovetail. And I'm just approximately positioning these. I'll adjust them a little more accurately once I get them in place and I get my Vixen on. All right. So that's in pretty good. Let's see what's going on here. All right, we'll do that. So what I'm running into is I want this a little farther forward. As I mentioned in my previous video, where I want this is right through where the bolts are going. Unfortunately, I can't do that, so I'm going to push it up as much as I can. So I'm going to loosen these bolts, push it forward, and then tighten them back down. But I want to make sure everything's positioned properly first. So on to the Vixen. So before, I omitted a part here. When you defork your LX200, you're going to see a bunch of bolts that were used to hold the two black rings to the actual scope itself. I had to back out a couple of these for the Losmandy one, and then I backed out two more for the Vixen. So it's not going to affect any performance because we're putting screws right back into it, or bolts right back into it. So onto the Vixen. Make sure I got this in the right place. So that one goes there, that one goes there. All right, great. And I think this is a smaller Allen key. Yep. All right, first problem of the day. The bolts that I grabbed are a little bit too short, so bear with me and I'll grab the right length ones. We're back. So now with the proper length screws, let's try this again. Much better. Okay. And again, same thing with this. We want to just put this on just barely snug because we're going to end up loosening this to move the, all right, got it a little too tight, to move the dew heaters around. So actually, this one's in a pretty good place. This one, the front one rather, so the rear one, just going to slide this around, orient this in about the same place as the rear one. That should be good. Okay. I want to keep the cables coming about from the same location. That looks good. This one, let's do it about there. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to tighten this down. These are the wrong threads. All right, we're just going to stop this until we get the right size bolts. Okay, we're back. After a couple permutations here, I found out that the hex heads that I had were actually the wrong thread size. So I'm going back to Phillips. I'm not crazy about that. The only reason I don't like using Phillips here is because everything else on my telescope is using a hex head, and this is a Phillips. So just have to have two sets of tools to disassemble it. So it's not the end of the world. It's just not my preferred. And I've already got my dew heaters aligned. I'm making sure I'm keeping my Vixen nice and straight. It's not super critical. I don't have a guide scope or anything that's going to be connecting to my dovetail here, so it's not super critical, but just to keep everything looking nice and tidy. Okay. All right. Pretty happy with that. Unhappy with that. Okay, next thing is installing the shoes. The first one will be on my ASIAir. With that, I need to install my USB hub. So with my USB hub, I'm going to be using a zip tie, probably not that size. Probably this size. Yep. So 14-incher. I think I used 2. And since I never use the outputs on my ASIAir, I can just go ahead and cover them up. There are 4 ports on my USB hub, so I want to make sure that I have those exposed. And I also want to make sure that I'm not covering up my PC connector. I don't use that all that often. This is just when I make the oops and I forget to bring my USB stick and I'm storing stuff on the ASIAir and I need to offload it. If I'm covering up the port, I can't offload it. So I start with just putting one, and again, checking the port, making sure I'm not covering it. I like to keep stuff as neat and tidy as possible. So I'll keep the end of the cable tie on the edge of the ASIAir, and then lining up the USB hub with the edge of the ASIAir as well. And that looks like it's in pretty decent. Let's see if I can tighten this up 1 or 2 more. No, maybe not. Okay. So we'll put 1 more on here so this doesn't slip at all. I like things being exactly the same so it looks symmetrical. So make sure your zip ties are going the same way. It really doesn't matter. It's just my own. Okay. So we've got the USB hub attached pretty solidly to the ASIAir. I forgot to grab my snips. Just keep everything nice and clean. Okay. Next thing, now that we have the zip ties installed, we can install the shoe. Shoe's right here. Grab a couple bolts for it. I want to make sure that the shoe is going to be in the right, because it can go either direction, 90 degrees. So I don't want my ASIAir like that. I'd rather have it oriented long ways so it's the same direction as the plate. little sticky there. Perhaps you don't have the exact right size. Don't want to strip this out, so grabbing the right size Allen key, making sure. Now that's on pretty tight. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so before I attach it to the Vixen, I'm going to cable manage my USB. So simply just wrapping it around itself 2 or 3 times just to take up the slack, not making it super tight, but tight enough. Okay. Now there are a couple different options for ports, and I will give you a close-up of this. The blue USB ports are USB 3.0, and then the black ports are the older, slower USB. I believe are USB 2.0, if I remember correctly. Please correct me in the comments if you would. So you want to connect your camera to your USB 3.0 hub, or USB 3.0 port, not to the hub. You want to connect your hub, however, to another USB 3.0 because you are transferring lots of data to your camera. So you want to make sure that it can have a high rate of speed for the transfer. So what I mean by blue and black is the little plastic piece has either a blue indicator or a black indicator. Blue is 3.0, black is 2.0, I believe. Okay, now for me, the orientation I want the ASIAir is towards my imaging train, towards the back of my telescope, or the OTA. I can put it about here. Doesn't really matter. This seems like a good enough place as any. All right. So the next thing that I'm going to install will be the Powerbox. Trying to remember if I had any. Yes, I did. So with the Powerbox, I mentioned that I have a 90-degree power cable for it. This is to supply power to the Powerbox. Unfortunately, the power connector for the Powerbox, the spring-loaded or the tension for the power connector itself is not that strong. So it's not going to fall out now, but it doesn't take very much force for the cable to fall out. And it's fallen out on me many, many times. So what I've done is I've zip tied it gently so it stays shut. And we're going to grab one of these. No, probably a longer one. Yeah, that should do it. And again, I wanted it just so it's going to hold the power plug in place. And that should do it. It's putting a little bit of strain on it, which I'm not crazy about, but it's not going to fall out, and it is just power, so it should be okay. Oh, that looks better. There we go. Now I don't have any strain on it, and it's definitely not going to fall out now. No strain on it. It's not impeding any of my ports, any of my power ports going out. So I'm pretty happy with this solution. I think this is how I had it from before. If not, I think this is even better than what I had before. So again, you want to do your anything that you're tying around any device before you put the shoe on, because once you put the shoe on, you can't put the zip tie on it. And there we go. Yes. Lost my screws. And let me check the orientation of this before I go too much farther. I know I want this to come off this way. This doesn't matter. These go that way. All right. So if it's going this way, I want my shoe to come this way. All right. All right. Just to make sure. Shoes this way, shoes that. Yep. Again, nice and loose because these do have play in them. So before you get both bolts in, make sure it's nice and loose. All right, then you can tighten it down and tighten down the other one. Okay. So I've got my Powerbox and my ASIAir both mounted. My short power cable is going to power between my Powerbox and my ASIAir. So I can go ahead and what I did for that is I just simply looped it. I found that if I mashed it, it was a little too much strain on it. So just grab a port, any port. Loop it and zip it. All right, the next thing I'll install is the two things at once, and let's do the temperature control for the Powerbox. So we'll do that. And then before I cable manage that, I'm just going to put that underneath for now. And that can just go like under here. I've already backed out one of the screws, or one of the bolts rather. There we go. Nice and tight there. The next thing that I wanted to install with this is the temperature probe. So I wanted the temperature probe to be around the same place as my temperature probe for the Powerbox. And this is the temperature probe for my autofocuser. So it's not entirely critical, but I just figured keeping them both in the same place would be a decent idea. And if I remember right, the length of the autofocuser temperature probe was about perfect to line up with the focuser itself without having to take up any slack. Okay, the next thing is the controller for the mount. So for that, plug it into one of your slower USB, one of the black USB ports. So for this, the EQMod, for me, this is going to end up being around the same place as the power for the Powerbox. So I'm probably going to have to finish wiring this completely after I get it on my mount. But I know that these two are going to be pretty close to each other, so I'm just going to put them near each other and leave them there. And once I hook up my mount, I'll finish up the power for that. I am going to need power for my camera itself. So plug that into another one of the Powerbox. Just I'm sliding it underneath there, and I'll tidy all this up in a minute. All right. Next couple of cables I have is my camera cable itself. Again, extremely important that is in the blue USB 3.0. We want that as fast as possible for your camera. And then for the autofocuser, the last port that I'm going to be using doesn't need to be as fast. We're not doing tons of data to the autofocuser, so that one can be a little slower. So all of these three cables go to my imaging train. My dew heaters will do next, and then we'll do some cable management and we'll be done. So, and then these guys, we're going to have to wait until we get it on the mount. And we'll do that actually through the magic of movie. We'll do that later. All right, so dew heaters, we're going to plug these into the pocketbook or the Powerbox, but we've got all this extra slack, so we're just going to simply take that up. I'm going to put it about where the power cable is, so we'll just wrap it around my hand here a bunch of times, not super tight, but just enough to take up the slack and make sure we have enough to plug in. That looks pretty good. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to be nice and tidy. Okay, so about like that. I'll just put a single cable tie through that, just to hold it there for a second. And for the other let's see, I hadn't really planned on this one yet, but I think I'll attach this to where the temperature sensors are. It makes the most sense. So we'll stretch this out just a tiny bit. Then just wrap it around my finger or my hand here. That should be good. Enough to plug in. Leave this out like this. And we'll connect this up. And we're going to need a longer cable tie for this. Oh, no harm, no foul. All right, we'll try to get this to be as clean as possible. All right, I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. Not perfect, but not terrible. Okay. Plug this in. No kinks, no. All right, I think I've got everything mounted up here. Oh no, I'm gonna need to tidy up that. So the next thing I'll do is for the imaging train, that's going this way, that one's going this way. So I'm going to tidy up this real quick. When I say tidy up, I'm just adding zip ties to stuff that looks like it's fallen down. Just to keep stuff together. Zip ties are cheap, and keeping stuff tidy is the name of the game. Okay. So all 4 of these. So we are going to start using some of the split tubing. So I know I need these 2 together, and I've already pre-measured out this tubing, so I'm pretty sure I have these correct. And there's no real easy way to get cables in the split tubing. Sometimes if the cable's a little stiff, you can just kind of push it in and it can get through. Otherwise, you can use your fingernail if you have them to kind of put it in. I'm using the pad of my thumb. That worked fairly well. Okay, so this cable's a little longer, but it's not terrible. And then let's see, yep. So this one comes up here. And I'm going to put all 4 cables into this. Okay, one thing I do want to point out is when you have one set of cables that need to split into two different locations, which is what I have here. I've got one for my autofocuser and then one for my imaging train itself for my cameras. What I've done is I've just taken the wires that need to come out of the loom, and I'm going to add a zip tie right before it and right afterwards and right there as well on the other part of the wire loom, and that keeps things together fairly well. So I'll show you the finished product. Okay, so now just adding some zip ties to hold things together. All right, that actually looks pretty good. Can add one here on the end. And one here on this end. And again, I've pre-measured my train. I know that this cable will reach without much slack to the end of the train, and that's the key, is getting your cables as close as possible without without having any or as little slack as possible. Okay, when we come back, we're going to see the finished product. I'll have it on the mount, and we will go from there. All right, I'm back, and as you can see, I've attached my mount to my OTA. And the last thing we're going to do, as I mentioned, is I'm going to measure up my mount power and, or rather my Astrobox power and my EQMod. So the EQMod cable was way too long, so I just need to measure it to make sure I have it at the appropriate size so I don't have too much slack in there. And then I'm going to use this little short piece of wire loom and tidy it up. So I've already plugged in the EQMod cable, and looks like that's going to go about to here. And I kind of already had this tidied up from before, so I can just use the same creases in the cable as I had before. Lo and behold, it works out perfectly, which is good. Okay, so I just bundled the bunch of cable, clip off the end. Now I'll use this little piece of wire loom and put both these cables in it just to keep them all nice and tidy. And I pre-measured this, so actually this is a little longer than I thought, so that just means probably use the wrong cable or wrong wire loom, but it's fine. This one apparently is a little short, but it's fine. I'd rather actually have a little extra play in that one. So this one's going to end here. When I cut the wire loom, I just use the same snips. And a wire loom's fairly inexpensive as well. I'm going to save that in case I need that on another project. Okay. Now, as I've done before, I'll just throw a couple of zip ties on this just so the cables don't pop out of it. No, one there. Perfect. I'll just disconnect these guys. All right. One here. Okay, so again, power, EQMod. One thing that I wanted to tidy up a tiny bit were all these cables up in this area. And I'm just going to throw a zip tie around all of them. Probably an 8-inch here should work. Yep, that's going to work nicely. That's much better. All right, I think we are done. So I'll give you guys a closer view. So starting from my ASIAir, I've got all my USB connections. Down, this little cable is popped out of my wire loom. Let's see if I can get that going a little better. There, looks a little better. Well, whatever. It's in for the most part. And then where it splits, I don't know if it's going to focus decently enough, but as you can see, I've got one zip tie here, another zip tie on this side, and then I've got my other wire loom coming off there for my autofocuser, and then for the camera comes down here to my USB and then my power. Then up here, this is what I just cleaned up. Doesn't look perfect, but all of my cables are fairly tidy. I've got that loop of the long power cable, 2 power cables going into the Pegasus, my 2 dew heaters, all nice and wire loomed up there, or rather zip tied, and then the wire loom for the last part with the EQMod and the power coming out of my mount, and the EQMod's on the bottom of the mount. Okay, if you guys have any questions, please, or any comments, please leave them in the area below. And I'll see you guys on the next video in clear skies.